You are probably hyped about the Snapmaker U1, multi-tool head printing that we know from printers like the Prusa XL, but for a price below $800. And I have to admit, I was hyped too. But after watching almost every beta review on YouTube and the Snapmaker Q&A on September 8th, I realized there's one thing that no one is talking about. And it's the thing that will decide whether Snapmaker finally delivers or if it leaves a trail of frustrated users behind. This video shows you what every U1 review is missing and why it matters before you buy. Hi, my name is Niels and you are watching Perspective 3D. Every 3D printer launch has its own hype cycle. But why is the U1 creating so much buzz compared to the rest? What's the real reason it's suddenly everywhere in your feed? Snapmaker has clearly flooded YouTube with better reviews, which is smart, because it creates the impression that everyone is talking about it. And in this case, the attention is justified, because the U1 brings something to the table that hobbyists have been waiting on for years: affordable toolchanger technology. Until now, toolchanger systems have been out of reach for most hobbyists. Prusa was the only mainstream company offering such a technology, but with the downside of a hefty price tag of at least $3,500 for the 5-head version. Why so expensive? The reason is the docking system. Getting toolheads to reliably attach and detach without misalignments or failures is one of the harder engineering challenges in 3D printing. That's why, up to now, only high-end machines like the Prusa XL have offered it. Which makes the U1 so surprising. I mean, Snapmaker is promising a 4-toolhead system at an early bird price under $800 and a retail price of $1,000. On paper, that's unheard of. Imagine you're a hobbyist who always wanted to experiment with multi-material prints for supports or toolhead flexibility, but you never had the budget for Prusa XL. Suddenly, Snapmaker is telling you, here's the same technology at a fraction of the cost. That's why you can't escape the hype cycle right now. But as exciting as that sounds, there's something most reviewers are leaving out. Here's the catch. Hardware alone doesn't decide whether a printer succeeds. What actually happens once you start using it every day? I learned this the hard way with my own Snapmaker Artisan. In fact, it was supposed to be the very first video on my German channel back in 2023. But I never released it because despite the Artisan being solid from a hardware perspective, I kept running into problems. And the main reason was the software, their own slicer called Luben. On paper it looked fine. In practice it had quirks that made even simple tasks frustrating. One example that really got me: I spent days wondering why large prints kept failing on one side. Turns out, Luben actually let me place objects in areas unreachable by the second extruder. The slicer didn't warn me, it just allowed me to set up an impossible print. That's when the frustration really set in. And then my Bambu X1C entered the scene. The difference was night and day. Not only was the X1C faster and more reliable in terms of hardware, it also offered something Snapmaker simply didn't have: a connected ecosystem. The Bambu Handy app and Maker World completely changed how I worked. Instead of spending hours fighting with Luben, I could just browse models, tap print, and get going instantly. That convenience was such a game changer that I abandoned the Artisan entirely. And because of that, I never published the video I had filmed. I couldn't, in good faith, recommend the Artisan to anyone. But looking back, that experience taught me one very important lesson. It's not enough to build exceptional printer hardware. Firmware and the ecosystem behind it have become just as important and often decide whether a printer actually succeeds. I have the feeling this shift isn't just about me. It reflects where the entire 3D printing market is heading. But why do software and ecosystem matter so much now when early adopters of 3D printing used to accept rough edges? Think about how the community has changed. A few years ago, most people buying 3D printers were tinkerers. They actually enjoyed fiddling with firmware, tweaking slicer settings, and solving problems on forums. But today it's completely different. People want to print as a form of creativity or just for fun. They don't want the printer itself to be a project, they want a printer to make projects possible. And that's why Prusa launched Printables and Bambu tapped into Maker World. These platforms allow creators to share their projects and users to find their next print. It's a whole ecosystem in itself. Bambu took it even further with Maker which let you design your own creations. Things like light boxes, flexi toys, or desk organizers directly from templates. And Prusa reinvented the slicer with Easy Print, a mobile app that now not only lets you prepare prints for Prusa printers, but also for third-party devices. That means they are not just building for their own ecosystem, but actively expanding what's possible for the whole community. For me, it feels like the entire industry has crossed the line. Once the thrill came from tinkering with the printer, now the thrill comes from what the printer lets you create. Which raises the question, where does Snapmaker fit into this new landscape? And this is exactly where my doubts about the Snapmakers U1 begin. On the surface, they made some smart choices, but how they are handling software could hold them back. As I said earlier, software was the main reason I left the Artisan behind, even though the hardware looked solid. And that's exactly why I'm cautious with the U1. To give Snapmaker credit, they have announced that the U1 will run on Clipper firmware and use a fork of Orca Slicer called Snapmaker Slicer. On the surface, that seems like a safe bet. By choosing open source projects, Snapmaker ensures that even if they eventually abandon support, the community could step in and keep things alive. And that kind of safety net does matter nowadays. But here's the problem. Snapmaker isn't actually joining the Clipper or Orca Slicer team. They are forking those projects, and there's always a risk that forks of software drift behind, duplicate effort, and fragment the user base. I've seen this myself. During my Creality High review, I had to use their Orca Slicer fork just to unlock all the features. And honestly, it was simply a worse version of Orca. The same risk exists for Snapmaker Slicer. It could become a lose-lose for everyone. Snapmaker spends resources just trying to keep up on the Orca Slicer development, while users miss out on the latest features. And that's the real danger. Instead of putting their energy into innovation and ecosystem features that users actually want, Snapmaker could end up stuck maintaining a weaker version of tools that already exist. After all, you might be wondering, if the risks are so real, why did I still decide to back the project myself? The simple answer is curiosity. I funded the U1 because I want to give it a fair test here on the channel, a fair test and my unbiased opinion. My experience with the Artisan makes me cautious, especially about the software side, but I also don't want to dismiss the U1 before it even launches. However, my hopes for any new announcement during the September 8th event in terms of software or their own project platform haven't been fulfilled. Don't get me wrong, I do not want to kill your excitement if you have already backed the U1. The beta reviews do show promising hardware, the mechanics look solid, the toolchanger concept is ambitious, and if it performs anywhere close to what Snapmaker promises, people will have a lot of fun with it. At the same time, my own history with Snapmaker keeps me from jumping on the hype train too fast. I've seen strong hardware get dragged down by weak software, and unless Snapmaker changes that pattern, the U1 could end up in the same place. And that's really the big question, because in today's market, strong hardware is no longer enough. The winners are the companies that build ecosystems people actually want to use. And if Snapmaker figures that out, the U1 could be their turning point. If not, it risks becoming just another machine that looked good on paper but left users frustrated. What won't leave you frustrated is watching another video. Your subscription supports this channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.